2 Samuel 13 through 19. I'll begin reading chapter 13, and sometime around noon I'll get to chapter 19. I want to do the Absalom event with David, and it's multiple chapters here, and I'm not going to read all of it. My purpose is I want us to try and get into David's head and what's going on. David is probably the most revealed person outside of Jesus in the whole Bible, because we know a lot about him. We meet him as a child, as a shepherd. We meet him as a young boy, as a shepherd, a young boy playing the harp for Saul, a young man killing Goliath, a young man, general of Saul's army, a young man labeled a traitor, run out of town for 10 years, becoming king. We have a lot of information about David, his life, and we can see the roller coaster that he goes through, from shepherd to harp player for Saul, to killing Goliath, to Saul's number one man, to Saul's number one enemy. He has highs, he has lows. And in the early part of his life, he walks with God the whole way. His heart always belongs to God. It does for all of his life. But today, as you look at the Absalom event, I think this may be David's darkest hour, his most depressing, discouraging, hardest event, because it's his own family who's out there destroying. It's a consequence of his sin with Bathsheba, not punishment. Punishment of sin is hell, but a consequence of his sin is his family's train wreck because of his failure with Bathsheba and his multiple wives, for that matter. So as we look through these chapters, I'm probably going to try and do a narrative of Absalom, throwing in verses here and there to emphasize what's going on, to tell the story. And what I want you to think about is you're David, and you're the one who is losing everything. What goes through your heart, what goes through your mind, what are your emotions, what are your feelings? When it's your son that's out to kill you, what do you feel, what do you think? Try and get to David's head, David's misery, if you will, as his world falls apart, and literally as he loses everything. This will be the second time David's lost everything. When he was married to Michal, Saul's daughter, remember Saul sent to kill him in his house. He escaped through the window, left everything behind, put the clothes on his back. He lost everything when he left that time. This happens again later in life, much older, much bigger family, children, etc. So Absalom and Amnon, they go together. Amnon is the one who, because he's a sexual pervert, he rapes his sister. David does nothing. We discussed this last Sunday. And then Absalom is the one who kills Amnon. That in itself begins this dark time for David, which lasts about 9 years. So we move from Amnon, the rapist who's killed by his half-brother Absalom, to Absalom. When Absalom kills Amnon, because of the law, he is now should be killed also as a murderer. He flees. Important to know who Amnon is before he flees. In 1 Samuel 27, verses 8 and 9, we meet Absalom. Now David and his men went up and raided, we meet his granddad, raided the Geshurites, and the Girzites, and the Amalekites, for they were inhabitants of the land from ancient times, as you come to Shur, even as far as the land of Egypt. They have attacked the land and did not leave a man or a woman alive, and took away the sheep, the cattle, the donkeys, the camels, the clothing, then returned and came to Achish. Well, the land of Geshur is where Amnon's mom, grandparents are from. In fact, Amnon's granddad is Talmaiah, king of Geshur. David attacked this land before he became king. It's possible that Amnon's mother was given to David as a wife to help create a treaty between the king of Geshur and King David, possibly. To me, the important part here is Amnon is not just David's son, a prince. Amnon is a son of a princess, his mother, the grandson of a king, king of Geshur. I say that because I think Amnon is probably one of the most arrogant people in the Bible. And the text throughout, you read everything about Amnon that supports what I'm saying. I'm not being subjective here. I think the factual statements in the Bible is Amnon was very, very arrogant. His actions portray that. In 14:25 through 27, now in all Israel there was no one as handsome as Absalom. So highly praised from the sole of his foot, the crown of his head, there was no defect in him. When he cut his hair of his head, and it was at the end of every year that he cut it, for it was heavy on him, so he cut it. It weighed the hair of his head at 20 shekels by the king's weight. To Absalom there were born 3 sons and 1 daughter. So Absalom's personal appearance was the most beautiful man in all of Israel. But he had really good hair. I already don't like him. Can't imagine that much hair that weighs that much. What a headache. I believe Absalom thought he was better than everybody else in Israel. And I say that because of the way he acted. He thought he should be king and not David. I say that because he throws David out of Jerusalem and becomes king. I think Absalom's base attitude about himself in life is, I am the most important person on the planet. I am better than my dad and all of his other children. And I say that because Absalom sees himself as royalty. Because his mom's a princess, his granddad's a king, his great-granddad's a king. He comes from a true royal line. Then there's David, his dad, who's really just some poor farmer who found a way to become king of Israel. See, I don't think Absalom respects his dad anyway whatsoever. I think he dislikes him, disrespects him, and I think from the day he was aware of himself, planned to become king. Because he is the only one in David's household is a true royal descent. His mom's a princess, his granddad's a king. So I say all that to emphasize his arrogance, his pride, probably a narcissist. It's all about Amnon. Or Absalom, sorry. So that's who he is as a person. I think he's driven by his pride and his arrogance and his attitude of, I am better than everybody else in the household, even my dad, the king. All right, the rebellion. He seeks revenge for his sister. He kills Amnon, and from there he flees as a murderer to his granddad in Geshur. Chapter 13, verse 38. So Absalom had fled and gone to Geshur and was there 3 years. So we see him leaving. He's got someplace to go. He has family outside of Israel, and that's where he goes. Now, if you want to know where Geshur is, you have the Mediterranean Sea on the left. You have Israel. You have the Jordan River, the Sea of Galilee. East of the Sea of Galilee is Geshur. The tribe of Manasseh controlled that area. They were the ones who were to throw out the people of Geshur, which they didn't do. So that's where he flees to. He has another royal palace to run to, and that's where he goes, and that's where he lives. David mourns the absence of Absalom. Verse 39, the heart of David longed to go out to Absalom, for he was comforted concerning Amnon since he was dead. Interesting statement. He had comfort with Amnon because he was dead, but not Absalom. And I think you go back to where David lost Bathsheba's firstborn, the son. David did not eat, fasted and prayed night and day before God. When the child died, David got ready to clean himself up about his business. You see very much David's attitude. While they are living, by all means, you mourn for them, you pray for them, but once death comes, it's over. Move on. So with Amnon, nothing can be done for Amnon, he's dead. So David, he's gone, we move on. Absalom, though, David still had a heart for Absalom and wanted to be with him. That interests me because Absalom, I think, should have been transparent to David in his arrogance and his pride and his disgust of the rest of the family that he wasn't David's friend. I mean, he was a son who definitely played his dad and did it well. But David never caught on to that. So David mourns for Absalom's loss. So Joab sees David is not able to conduct business as usual, if you will, because of his mourning for Absalom. So Joab seeks for a woman from Tekoa to come and tell David a story, and the story is designed to convict David that he is being unfair to Absalom, and he should send for Absalom, bring him back, forgive him for what he did. After all, in reality, what Absalom did in killing Amnon was the law. He killed the adulterer. He kill the rapist, as the law says to do. So the woman convinces David. David agrees, and David sends for and brings back Absalom. Chapter 14, verse 21 and following. And the king said to Joab, behold, now I will surely do this thing. Go therefore, bring back the young man Absalom. Joab fell on his face to the ground, prostrated himself, and blessed the king. Then Joab said, today your servant knows that I have found favor in your sight, O my lord the king, and that the king has performed the request of his servant. So Joab arose and went to Geshur and brought Absalom to Jerusalem. However, the king said, let him turn to his own house and let him not see my face. So Absalom turned to his own house and did not see the king's face. So David brings Absalom back, but Absalom does not get to see the king. Well, for Absalom, this is a problem. Because if you can have a revolt and a rebellion to become king, you need to be able to be in the current king's presence, have his favor, to be able to sway the people of Israel to follow him instead of David. So Absalom needs to be forgiven by the king publicly so the rest of the people know he's not a condemned killer, just in house arrest, if you will. So he needs to have the king welcome him back, embrace him, and bless him so the rest of the kingdom can see Absalom is accepted by his dad and everything's okay. No issues here. But Absalom moves back, lives in Jerusalem for 2 years, and did not see the king's face. Verse 28 of chapter 14. At that point, Absalom says, I need to see the king because he needs to have his name cleared so he can have his rebellion. Says for Joab, Joab does not come. So Absalom burns Joab's field. And Joab comes to Absalom for why'd you burn my field? Absalom says, because you wouldn't come when I asked you to. Go tell my dad that I need to be welcomed into his presence as his son. So Joab goes, he talks to David, and David brings Absalom to him, and David blesses Absalom, which is forgiveness, and it pretty much communicates that Absalom is now free. No stain on him, if you will. No reason for him not to be seen as a legitimate son of the king, etc. 15, chapter 15. Now it came about after this that Absalom provided for himself a chariot and a horse and 50 men as runners before him. So once David accepted Absalom back, forgave him, Absalom basically had a parade for Jerusalem to say, look, here I am not a criminal, I am legitimate, love me, if you will, accept me. And then his rebellion begins, verse 2 to 15. Absalom used to rise early and stand beside the way to the gate, and when any man had a suit to come to the king for judgment, Absalom would call to him and say, from what city are you? And he would say, your servant is from one of the tribes of Israel. Then Absalom would say to him, see, your claims are good and right, but no man listens to you on the part of the king. Moreover, Absalom would say, oh, that one would appoint me judge in the land, then every man who has any suit or cause could come to me, and I would give him justice. And when a man came near to prostrate himself before him, he would put out his hand, take hold of him, and kiss him. In this manner Absalom dealt with all of Israel who came to the king for judgment. So Absalom stole away the hearts of the men of Israel. And basically what that describes is Absalom put himself in a position as the king's son, dressed very well, pretty boy. When people came to see the king, they would walk by Absalom. They would want to honor Absalom as a prince, to bow before him. He would not let them bow before him. He would stand them up, embrace them in a welcome as equal to them. And then he would say, what's your problem? And then he would say, if I were judge, I would do this for you. And everybody that came through, Absalom gave judgment as they wanted to hear it, which is impossible to do because somebody's got to be wrong. Somebody's got to pay. But for Absalom, when he said, my judgment is, everybody won. Does that sound familiar? In a democracy, you run for office, you promise everything, and you get elected. You may never deliver, which they never do deliver, but that's how you get elected. You promise everything. Absalom did that. He's the first successful social liberal Democrat. But that's basically what he's doing. He's saying, what you want, I would give to you as king. So as time goes by, the people began to fall in love with Absalom. And the idea that he would make a great king sounds good to them. Verse 7. Now it came about at the end of 40 years that Absalom said to the king, please let me go and pay my vow, which I have vowed to the Lord in Hebron. If your text says 40 years, it should say 4 years. David reigned for 40 years, so that's not possible. There's just a textual error in the printing there. Yours may say 4 years anyway. Most of them do nowadays.
They say 40 and then correct.
Yeah. The king said to him, go in peace. So he rose and went to Hebron. But Absalom sent spies throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, as soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, then you shall say, Absalom is king in Hebron. Then 200 men went with Absalom from Jerusalem, who were invited and went innocently, and they did not know anything. And Absalom sent for Ahithophel, the Gilonite, David's counselor, from his city Gilah, while he was offering the sacrifices. And the conspiracy was strong, for the people increased continually with Absalom. So the rebellion begins here. It is interesting, Absalom's wisdom. He wins the hearts of the people. He then goes to Hebron to announce himself as king. Hebron is very important as a choice to do this. Absalom makes himself king, if you will, in the capital of Judah. If Judah, the tribe, had a capital, it was Hebron. Where was David crowned king of Judah? Hebron. Where was David crowned king of all of Israel? Hebron. Who did Absalom primarily win to his side? The people of Judah, David's people. The very grassroots of David's support is the tribe of Judah. Who is supporting Absalom now? Judah. David's grassroots are now Absalom's grassroots. He has a very well thought out conspiracy and rebellion. When the tribe of Judah makes Absalom king instead of David, the rest of Israel will somewhat naturally follow in suit, because Judah is David's tribe. If David's tribe is rejecting him as king for Absalom, the rest of Israel will probably follow suit. Now, my thinking is Absalom is too arrogant and too proud and too full of himself to apply this out on his own. And therefore, who did it? And I believe that Ahithophel is the one who did it. It's Ahithophel's advice that is hung on as though God has spoken by David and by others. I think Ahithophel is part of Absalom's conspiracy early on. Who is Ahithophel? You remember? Bathsheba's granddad. And I think Ahithophel had been plotting David's demise from the day David raped Bathsheba and killed Uriah. And he's getting his revenge now, at this time. And I say that because when he gives advice on what to do once Absalom comes into Jerusalem, he tells Absalom, give me 12,000 men. I will go and pursue David while he's still fleeing and disorganized. I will catch him unaware and surprise him. Those with him will scatter and flee, and I will kill David and David only. Ahithophel did not want to kill Bathsheba or his grandkids. He wanted to kill David and nobody else. His advice to Absalom was, I can go now and successfully kill just David. The man's getting his revenge. Again, the consequence of David's sin has caught up with him. Excuse me. The text does not fill in what I'm saying, but it makes sense to me that Ahithophel, being with Absalom, was a part of this from early on. He had a big part in this process. So Absalom enters Jerusalem, chapter 16. Beginning in verse 15. I'm going to read quite a bit here. Then Absalom and all the people, the men of Israel, entered Jerusalem, and Ahithophel with him. Now it came about when Hushai, the Archite, David's friend, came to Absalom, that Hushai said to Absalom, long live the king, long live the king. Absalom said to Hushai, is this your loyalty to your friend? Why did you not go with your friend? Then Hushai said to Absalom, "No, for whom the Lord, this people, and all the men of Israel have chosen, his I will be, and with him I will remain. Besides, whom shall I serve? Should I not serve in the presence of his son? As I have served in your father's presence, so I will be in your presence." Then Absalom said to Ahithophel, "Give your advice, what shall we do?" Ahithophel said to Absalom, "Go into your father's concubines, whom he has left to keep the house, then all Israel will hear that you have made yourself odious to your father. The hands of all who are with you will also be strengthened." Now, this is again fulfillment of Nathan's prophecy that David's wives will be violated in public. Ahithophel is the one who gives us advice. Again, revenge for David and Bathsheba. So they pitched a tent for Absalom on the roof, and Absalom went into his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel. The advice of Ahithophel, which he gave in those days, was as if one inquired the word of the Lord. So was all the advice of Ahithophel regarded by both David and Absalom. Furthermore, Ahithophel said to Absalom, "Please let me choose 12,000 men that I may arise and pursue David tonight. I will come upon him while he is weary and exhausted and terrify him so that all the people who are with him will flee. Then I will strike down the king alone. And I'll bring back all the people to you. The return of everyone depends on the man you seek. Then all the people will be at peace." So the plan pleased Absalom and all the elders of Israel. Then Absalom said, "Call now Hushai the Archite also, and let us hear what he has to say." When Hushai had come to Absalom, Absalom said to him, "Ahithophel has spoken thus. Shall we carry out his plan? If not, you speak." So Hushai said to Absalom, "This time the advice that Ahithophel has given is not good." Moreover, Hushai said, you know your father and his men. They are mighty men, and they are fierce, like a bear robbed of her cubs in the field. And your father is an expert in warfare, and will not spend the night with the people. Behold, he has now hidden himself in one of the caves or another place, and it will be when he falls on them at the first attack that whoever hears it will say, 'There has been a slaughter among the people who follow Absalom.' And even the one who is valiant, whose heart is like the heart of a lion, will completely lose heart. For all Israel knows that your father is a mighty man, and those who are with him are valiant men. But I counsel that all Israel be surely gathered to you from Dan to Beersheba, as the sand that is by the sea in abundance, and that you personally go into battle. So we shall come to him in one of the places where he can be found, and we will fall on him as the dew falls on the ground, and of him and of all the men who are with him, not even one will be left. If he withdraws into a city, we'll destroy the city," etc. So Hushai, who actually is David's ally here, gives his advice, and Absalom, because God so leads, follows Hushai's advice, and David is saved. So Hushai's advice is followed, and then Absalom will do as he said. And he gathers the army, and he pursues David to kill David. David puts his men together. Joab is still his general. David sends his army out in 3 camps to fight against Absalom, and they end up fighting in a forest. And the forest, the Bible says, kills more men than David's men of Absalom's men. So God definitely intervenes. As David has said often, the battle is the Lord's. God fights for David here against Absalom's army, and Absalom's army is defeated. Absalom then realizes he is beaten, and he flees. And I can't help but laugh when he flees. Chapter 18, beginning verse 9. Now Absalom happened to meet the servants of David, for Absalom was riding on his mule, and the mule went under a thick branches of a great oak, and his head caught fast in the oak. So he was left hanging between heaven and earth, while the mule that was under him kept going. So his awesome hair, got caught in the tree and yanked him right off the donkey. I was riding my bike once to San Francisco State Park, and I was by myself. There was a place you go way, way, way back in the back. It's a really good jump downhill, and I didn't do that because I was by myself. I messed up and fell. I might get hurt, and nobody would be there to help me out. So I did the easier way down. As I'm coming down the bottom, I look up where I wished I would have come, and looking at that, I didn't see this pine tree, and I ran into it. And my bike kept going, and I came right off of it. That's Absalom. I can just see that. And there he is, hanging by his hair in the oak tree. And as David's army Some of them see him. They do not kill Absalom because David said, please spare my son Absalom. When Joab sees Absalom, he takes 3 javelins and runs them through his heart and kills him on the spot. Joab understands the man must be killed, even though David gave orders, do not kill him. So Absalom is dead. David still, I'm not sure, well, I am sure why. David loves his son greatly, and he mourns his son's death. Now, that's Absalom's story in rebellion. Put yourself in David's heart. The man is probably in his 50s by now, maybe even 60s. He's probably reigned for a good 20 to 30 years. He reigned 40 years total. He has a name for himself. He has possessions. He has his integrity, his character that have been totally slandered by his own son. He's been run out of his house by his own son. He flees for the life of himself and his wives and his children. Now, Absalom would probably want to kill every child of David to make sure there's no threat in being king. David has a son, an Absalom, who is arrogant, prideful, to the point of he despises his own dad. I can't imagine one of my kids despising me. I mean, it bothers me if they don't talk to me sometimes. Like, have I hurt you in some way? Have I offended you in some way? I mean, I'm still a dad. It doesn't really matter if I have or not. That's what dad does. But either way, it would crush me to know my child wants to destroy me like Absalom wants to destroy David. And go back to Amnon. What disappointment David must have felt with Amnon and his sin and his failure. And that's his firstborn son. And what a wreck he turned out to be. For David, I see only darkness in his heart because he has lost everything. He's lost his name, his character, his kingdom. He is a disgrace to everybody that knows him, pretty much. He flees for his life in the night from Jerusalem to the wilderness. How do you walk through that and have any peace? How do you walk through that and be able to sleep at night? That's what I want us to try and wrap our minds around, is how does David survive? How does David overcome? And the answer actually is very simple. Turn to Psalm chapter 3. The title, Morning Prayer of Trusting God, a Psalm of David when he fled from Absalom, his son. O Lord, now my adversaries have increased. Many are rising up against me. Many are saying of my soul, there is no deliverance for him in God. But you, O Lord, are a shield about me, my glory, and the one who lifts my head. I was crying to the Lord with my voice, and he answered me from his holy mountain. I lay down and slept. I awoke. The Lord sustains me. I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people who have set themselves against me round about. Arise, O Lord, save me, O my God. For you have smitten all my enemies on the cheek. You have shattered the teeth of the wicked. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Your blessing be upon your people. David survives because he humbles himself before God. And that psalm tells us that. And I want to point out David's actions as this event unfolds. Chapter 15, verses 13 through 15. Then a messenger came to David saying, the hearts of men of Israel are with Absalom. David said to all his servants who were with him at Jerusalem, arise and let us flee, for otherwise none of us will escape from Absalom. Go in haste, for he will overtake us quickly and bring down calamity on us and strike the city with the edge of the sword. Then the king's servants said to the king, behold, your servants are ready to do whatever my lord the king chooses. David leaves the city to save the city. David humbles himself to God, and that God allows Absalom to do what he's doing. To save Jerusalem, and really Israel, David flees from the city to save the city. Chapter 16, beginning in verse 5. When King David came to Bahurim, behold, there came out from there a man of the family of the house of Saul, whose name was Shimei, the son of Gera, He came out cursing continually as he came. He threw stones at David and at all the servants of King David. And all the people and all the mighty men were at his right hand and at his left. Thus Shimei said when he cursed, get out, you man of bloodshed, you worthless fellow. The Lord has returned upon you all the bloodshed of the house of Saul, in whose place you have reigned, and the Lord has given the kingdom into the hand of your son Absalom. And behold, you are taken in your own evil, for you are a man of bloodshed. Then Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, said to the king, why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over now and cut off his head. But the king said, what have I to do with you, O sons of Zeruiah? If he curses, and if the Lord has told him, curse David, then who shall say, why have you done so? Then David said to Abishai and to all his servants, behold, my son, who came out from me, seeks my life. How much more now this Benjamite? Let him alone and let him curse, for the Lord has told him. Perhaps the Lord will look on my affliction and return good to me instead of his cursing this day. So David and his men went on the way, and Shemaiah went along on the hillside parallel with him. And as he went, he cursed and cast stones and threw dust at him. David humbled himself before this Benjamite, the family of Saul, cursing him, and said, who am I to kill this man? God may have sent him here to curse me. Look at the humility of David. He has lost everything. Here's a great opportunity to get revenge on somebody who hates him. Go kill this man. David says no. God has put me where I am right here, right now, on this dusty road with this man cursing me. I'm not going to argue with God. I am humbling myself before God no matter how bad it gets. God is God. I trust him. I'm going to follow him. That's an amazing thing to me. David's darkest hour, his response is not get even with somebody. It's God's in control. God can take care of this guy and everything else. Chapter 18. Verses 2 through 4. David sent the people out, 1/3 under the command of Joab, 1/3 under the command of Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, Joab's brother, and 1/3 under the command of Attiah the Gittite. And the king said to the people, I myself will surely go out with you also. But the people said, you should not go out, for if we indeed flee, they will not care about us. Even if half of us die, they will not care about us. But you are worth 10,000 of us, therefore not as better for you. Be ready to help us from the city. Then the king said to them, whatever seems best to you, I will do. David humbles himself to his people. He wants to go and do battle with them. Not like David to send them out in this kind of battle and not go with them. They say, no, you must stay. Chapter 18, 33 through chapter 19, verse 8, David mourns Absalom's death. Joab comes to David and says to David, if you don't go out in the city right now and support the men who just fought and almost died for you in battle, they will all leave you. David again humbles himself before the people as their king. He must put aside his grief for his son Absalom and go be king of his people. Again, he's humbling himself to God. He humbles himself to the people who follow him. It's an amazing picture of David. Very much saying, God is God, and everything is in his hands. Now, one more thing I want to point out. In chapter 15, as David is leaving, several people, the priests, their sons, the Levites, they bring the ark to go with David. Hushai comes to go with David. Ziba comes to go with David. Many people come out to go with David. He sends most of them back. In David's darkest hour, he is not alone. Yes, he has God with him, but there are people also that God's put in his life who stand fast with David and will go with him and fight with him and necessarily die with him. Interesting to me, the priest, the high priest, comes up with the Ark of the Covenant to go with David. God is not with Absalom, obviously. And the priests know that. They want to stay with David, who is God's chosen king. So as he flees, he's not fleeing by himself. He has someone with him. As David leads, tells all these people, if God wants me to be king, he will bring me back. Stay here and wait for me. again, for me, the huge part of this is David's consistent attitude of, God made me king. When God's ready, he will remove me as king. And I submit to God, period. Now, for you and I, what's your darkest hour? I have a very good friend who has lost everything at one point in his life. How does he walk through that? How do you overcome? And for me, it's only Jesus. It's only relationship with God. If I were to lose everything, and we talk about Job losing so much, David loses much multiple times. And I like his response better than I see in Job. David's response is always, there is one God. You are God. You are my God, and I serve you. And wherever you place me in life, you are my God, and I serve you, no matter how dark it may appear, no matter how miserable I might be. You are my God, and I walk with you. And for me, that's the only way to survive anything in life. God is God, there is no other. And I'll walk with him. Because he is God, and there is no other. So the reality is, no matter what our dark hour is, there's God. You go back to Psalm 3. Verse 3, but know that the Lord has set apart the godly man. That's Psalm 4. Psalm 3. But you, O Lord, are a shield about me, my glory, and the one who lifts my head. David is trusting solely in God and no other. He totally depends on God. In verse 4, I was crying to the Lord with my voice, and he answered me from his holy mountain. I lay down and slept. Do you sleep when you are overcome with grief, with anxiety, with worry, with concern? Well, no. They that are awake stare at the ceiling. David says, I went to sleep. He turned it over to God and was able to literally lay down and go to sleep. No worries, no anxiety, no concern. Verse 7 and 8, David acknowledges that God is the one who has saved him. Now, you get back to verse 2. There is no deliverance for him in God. The world was saying of David, God's abandoned him. He has no salvation in God. He's without God. I would think for David, that'd be the hardest thing to hear. You want to think that my relationship with God is enough for me to have confidence that God is with me and only for my good. But the world would yell at us, God's abandoned you, you are wrong, you don't know what you're doing, you're not following God. David is losing everything, seeing chaos surround him, and being told God has abandoned you. Yet David does what? He runs to God. He stays in that relationship with God that was cemented permanently as that young boy and young man in the fields watching sheep. And that's why I encourage my children, you want to build a relationship with God now in your youth. Because once you have it now, it will never go away. It will never abandon you. And you'll remember it, and it will always be there to lift you up and walk you through your darkest hour. And I would think the darkest hour is ahead of all of us. Death of loved ones. Collapse of governments. Are you watching world history? There's a pandemic going on in China, and it's spreading worldwide. There are earthquakes happening in Puerto Rico, of all places, and other places. There are swarms of locusts in Africa and Pakistan. All these things communicate end times. All these things communicate. Christ's return, I think, is near. Be ready. Walk confidently in your relationship with God, and let the world around you see that, because they desperately need Jesus. And they see Jesus most in us when our world is crashed and we walk confidently in a relationship with Jesus. And they see Jesus shining in our darkest hour. And when I look at David in this story, I see God's relationship with him shining more than anything else. That is what God wanted for us from David. Again, we have so much information about David. We have tons of information about David. Why? Because David was a man after God's own heart. And in every event in his life, you are God. There is no other. I trust you. I lean on you. You are my salvation. We see that. The world sees that. The world around you needs to see, in your darkest hour, Jesus shining out brightly. That's what leads them to. Because the end is near. Let's pray. Father, I do praise you and worship you and thank you that you revealed yourself to me. You made yourself known to me as the only God, the creator of all the world, of me and my Savior, and now my King and my Lord. And Father, I pray you will strengthen all of us in confidence and boldness through our relationship with you to seek to be that light and be that salt, be that witness to the world around us, to communicate and shine for Jesus. Because the hour is near of your return. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.